Namaskar viewers, hello and welcome to Sansad TV. I am Teena Tha. Welcome to this special edition of Samvaad. As Pakistan escalates its aggression with multiple drone and missile attacks on Indian cities across various border states right from Jammu and Kashmir to Gujarat, our security forces, our armed forces stand as the first line of defense, not just intercepting but also neutralizing these threats. However, the current developments have in a way expanded the scope of national security to a broader civic domain. And this is where agencies like fire services, civil defense and home guards play a crucial role, because when our enemy makes an attempt to shift the battleground from the front line to civilian areas, it's important to understand how prepared we are, what the evolving security threats are, how aware should citizens be, what is the civic responsibility in such an emergency situation. To speak to us about all these aspects, I'm pleased to welcome the Director General of Fire Services, Civil Defence and Home Guards, Mr. Vivek Srivastava. Sir, thank you very much for your time. Welcome to Sansad TV.
Thank you very much.
You know, as much as we are confident and proud of how our armed forces have handled this situation and the aggression by Pakistan, the worry is, and at this time there needs to be an assurance at various levels, that even though the battle is sort of shifting to civic heartland, we need to be prepared. It's civic responsibility wherein you are at the helm of affairs. So just to calm down our viewers, the public at large, that there is nothing to worry, we are more than prepared. If you could take us through the preparations, the preparedness in terms of civil defense, fire services, in handling drone and missile attacks like the one that has happened in the last 24 hours.
I'll go a little back. Actually, this civil defense was envisaged post 1962 Chinese aggression over India. At that time, we had collaborated with the United Kingdom to make this organization, and the Civil Defence Act, which is a central act, was passed in 1968. It envisages, currently the Civil Defence Act envisages broadly two aspects: to take care of situation before a hostile attack, during a hostile attack, and in the aftermath of an hostile attack. As I said, these are civil defence volunteers. So, currently there are 5,95,000 civil defence volunteers across the country. We intend to ramp it to close to double this figure at a ratio of 1 to 1,000 population. So, this is where we stand. Even yesterday, the Honorable Prime Minister had taken a meeting of all the secretaries, Government of India, wherein he had very clearly specified that the civil defense activities across the country has to be strengthened. This civil defense activity is primarily to take care, because there is always a huge requirement of manpower during any volatile situation like what we are facing these days. So, as you rightly said, while the armed forces are defending the borders, in the hinterland it will be the civil defense and other auxiliary forces which will man other areas. The role of the civil defense is manifold, or the civil defense setup preparedness is manifold. The first is to warn the citizens regarding any incoming threat, especially aerial threat. Right. So, here we have 56 centers which actually receive warning signals from basically our armed forces, which is the Indian Air Force. So, their radars, etc., we track any aerial threat or any other threat which may be approaching a civilian area. This threat is then transmitted to these control centers. Now, all these control centers are under the control of the controller of civil defense, who is normally the district magistrate of that district. So, currently we have 244 notified civil defense districts. As you are aware, however, that we had conducted a large scale pan-India civil defense drill, in which all those 244 districts participated. Along with, we had given freedom to the state governments to increase or add as many districts as they wanted in those vulnerable districts, as we call. So, as I said, the first is the threat should come to the civil defense control rooms. From there to the various tertiary centers, town centers, this threat is then disseminate it. Now, on the receipt of a threat, then using sirens and other means, the citizens are warned. Now, here the role of the civil this is the backbone of the civil defense warning mechanism. Now, the next comes what action has to be taken by the civil defense volunteers and other auxiliary forces, and what action the citizenry has to take. So, the role of the civil defense and other auxiliary forces, which are primarily voluntary, as the home guards are also actually a voluntary force, but the fire services, they are a permanent force. So, currently in India, these total fire services, civil defense and home guard, they comprise close to 11.5 lakh population. As I said, we are trying to ramp it up. So, their job is to take care of any eventuality it might have happened. First, while the threat is incoming, there are some actions which a citizen has to take. For example, if it is an aerial threat, etc., if it is the border, then they are required to go to their shelters, which are designated shelters. In the hinterland, we are also trying to, we are also identifying and designating like metro subways, underground car parking as shelters in case of a aerial attack, etc. So, the first thing is to take shelter there. Second is and if one is unable to evacuate quickly, then there is other action to be taken. For example, you can lie down on the floor, close your ears, so that, because normally any explosion will lead to very high decibel of sound wave which may damage your eardrums. So, you are expected to actually lie down and plug your ears with your fingers. So, this is so that the damage or bodily damage can be minimized by flying debris or even shrapnel. So, all this action, series of action has to be taken before when the threat is coming. The second part of the action is when actually the action has actually happened, the bomb has actually struck, and whatever damage has to happen, it has actually happened. The second, there the role of the civil defense becomes clearer, because their civil defense is then subdivided into 12 services. So, depending upon the type of damage, if they are injured, then the injured has to be evacuated to the hospitals. If the hospital's capacity is full, then they will set up temporary medical facilities. Then if people have been evacuated or are there in shelters, then to provide them some basic amenities there in the shelter. So, these are actually delineated into 12 services. So, transport service is one, headquarters service is one, God forbid corpse service is also one, if removing of dead bodies, etc. So, all these actually duties have been delineated to different wardens. So, as I said, basically you can divide the civil defense backbone into 3 segments. One is disseminating of threat information through sirens, etc., when we receive the information regarding threat. One is to do preparations before actually any incident happens, like taking shelters, evacuating an area. If there is little time, then to take whatever precautions is there. And third is once the action has actually happened, that to be taken. A very fundamental role of all these forces are also to keep up the morale of the public.
Absolutely.
Because in any case, any eventuality, there will be, but the point is to keep in mind, not to panic. Normally, in any war, civilian areas are normally not targeted, but but one cannot actually always rely on that. So, basically, this is what the role of the civil defense is.
Especially when you are dealing with a country like Pakistan. So, even despite India reiterating that our response to the Pahalgam attack through Operation Sindoor was targeted only at the terrorist infrastructure in Pakistan occupied Jammu and Kashmir, they have attempted in the last 2 days to attack our civilian areas, military installations at least twice. So, the question is, when you are dealing with a rogue enemy and they will want the battleground to shift to civic heartland, we have to be prepared well in advance. And this conversation is important because 80% of our population, in fact more, has not seen a volatile situation like this post 1971. Kargil was perhaps confined to a region. So, pan-India, at least this kind of a situation did not arise. But in an age where warfare has evolved, where you're actually not physically crossing borders, but the damage can be huge, it's important for us to have this conversation and at least make the citizens aware of what their response should be in case of unconventional attacks like these. Let me come to a more specific question, and as a public broadcaster, because we want more and more people to understand that it's not the time to panic, but at the same time just recollect all the information that you have about how to respond during such attacks. So for example, if there is an aerial attack of the kind that happened in the last 24 hours, at least what the Pakistani army attempted to do, if any eventuality happens, what is the standard operating procedure? And sir, if I could request you to answer that question in Hindi, because as a public broadcaster, our effort is that the outreach should be more and more, so that SOP in case of an aerial attack.
First, let me actually tell you one thing. Normally, no country, even a rogue nation like the Pakistan, will try to hit a civilian infrastructure. The reason is not because they don't want to, but because as I can say, all these missiles etc. are very expensive. So you actually achieve no military objective by hitting a civilian area, while you lose your precious missile in doing that, and you also get international opprobrium. So what I can say, we do not normally expect that civilian infrastructure would be hit, but of course there can always be collateral damage. So some rogue missiles can always. Now, आप ये जानना चाह रहे थे कि एक ग्रैनुलर लेवल पे क्या करना चाहिए, क्या SOP होना चाहिए जो खास करके RWAs को एटसेट्रा जो कॉमन पब्लिक को करना है। पहला तो ये करना है कि जैसे मैंने कहा कि ये संभावना कि कोई सिविलियन एरिया को हिट किया जाएगा इस बहुत ही कम है, इसी के लिए उतना चिंता करने की सिविलियंस को ज़रूरत नहीं है। कोलैटरल डैमेज कहीं पे हो सकता है, उसके लिए हमको तैयार रहना है, लेकिन तैयारी हमको करनी है। तैयारी में क्या क्या करनी है, एक तो बहुत इम्पॉर्टेंट तैयारी ये है कि जो कहीं पे भी जो फायर का सिस्टम्स जो लगा हुआ है बिल्डिंग्स में, उसको इंश्योर करें कि वो फंक्शनल हो। हर जगह फायर का सिस्टम लगा रहता है, क्योंकि ये सब डैमेज से पहला इंसिडेंट होगा कि फायर का इंसिडेंट होगा। तो अगर फायर सिस्टम्स हमारा फंक्शनल है तो हम उसको जल्दी उसको काबू में कर पाएंगे। एक तो वो। दूसरा, इवैक्यूएशन ड्रिल्स जो है कि अगर कुछ थ्रेट हुआ तो किसी भी प्रेमाइसेस को हमको तुरंत इवैक्यूएट करना पड़ेगा। तो जैसे कि फायर का स्टेयरकेस होता है, इमरजेंसी स्टेयरकेस होता है, बहुत जगह हमको लगता है कि वहाँ पे पॉटेड प्लांट्स रखे रहते हैं, वो बंद रहता है, अपने सामान लोग रख देते हैं, तो उसको थोड़ा सा क्लियर करके रखें जिससे इवैक्यूएशन फास्ट हो पाए, ऑब्स्ट्रक्शन नहीं वहाँ पे मिले। छोटी मोटी तैयारी और भी लोग कर सकते हैं, जैसे कि एक छोटा सा मेडिकल किट, मतलब फर्स्ट एड किट, नथिंग वेरी बिग। मतलब कि ये मेरा एकदम ही कहना नहीं है कि आप मेडिसिन को होल्ड कीजिए, ऐसा करने की कोई ज़रूरत नहीं है। सप्लाईज आर रनिंग एब्सोल्युटली स्मूथ, बट छोटे मोटे ये के लिए कि वो आप रख लीजिए। एक टॉर्च रख लीजिए। अगर कहीं बाहर जाना, तुरंत निकलना पड़ा तो एक बॉटल पानी, एक टॉर्च, छोटे से मेडिसिन, इसकी आप तैयारी कर लीजिए। दूसरा ये है कि अगर आप जो सिटीजन्स हैं उनसे, मतलब कि इस माध्यम से मेरी अपील भी रहेगी कि जैसा मैंने कहा कि अगर आप सिविल डिफेंस में वॉलंटियर की तरह आज के दिन में आप एनरोल होना चाहते हैं तो यू आर वेलकम। मतलब कि आप कंट्रोलर्स के पास जाके आप वहाँ पे दें। हम लोग ये भी प्रयास करेंगे कि सिविल कंट्रोलर के मार्फत से एक छोटी बेसिक ट्रेनिंग भी आपको वहाँ पे दी जा पाए, जिससे कि आप खुद तो एक्शन ले ही पाएँ लेकिन दूसरे की भी आप मदद कर पाएँ, मतलब बेहतर रूप से, छोटी सी ट्रेनिंग के बाद। तो इसके लिए बहुत ज़्यादा तैयारी करने की ज़रूरत नहीं है, बस खाली जागरूकता रखना है कि जब अलर्ट का सिग्नल हो, चाहे ब्लैकआउट का ये हो, तो आप उस पर त्वरित एक्शन लें। और जो मैंने कहा कि जो छोटी प्रिपरेशन है, जैसे कि आपका जो फायर का अगर कोई सिस्टम है उसको आप तैयार रखें, छोटा सा पानी, एक टॉर्च, फर्स्ट एड किट, ये करके इसकी तैयारी है कि बहुत है।
So to deal with the current situation, if I may ask you, what are the kind of drills that are being conducted in different parts of the country? Because the SOP would differ in border cities vis-a-vis the cities which are away from the borders. So over the last few days, because tensions had begun to build up after Pahalgam, and then of course Pakistan expected India would respond, we expected that they would retaliate. So in the wake of developments over the last few days, how have we prepared? What are the kind of drills that we have been conducting in different parts?
ये जो सिविल डिफेंस की जो सेटअप है थ्रू आउट द कंट्री, इट हैज़ बीन एक्टिवेटेड। जैसे मैंने कहा कि दे आर वॉलंटियर्स, तो नॉर्मली वो अपना काम करते हैं, तो दे हैव उनको ले लिया गया है, मतलब कि दे आर ऑल ऑन बोर्ड। एक ऑल इंडिया बेसिस पे हमने एक्सरसाइज किया था, तो उसमें भी हमने जो कमी नोटिस की है, सभी जगह उतने जिस रूप से रिस्पॉन्ड करना चाहिए था काफ़ी जगह तो हुआ है, एंड देयर वाज अ काफ़ी पब्लिक इंथुजियाज्म भी था इसमें, और सभी ने अपना कंप्लीट योगदान दिया। जैसे आपने देखा होगा कि फॉर द फर्स्ट टाइम इवन गोल्डन टेम्पल वाज अंडर कंप्लीट ब्लैकआउट। सो नॉर्मली जो जनता की तरफ से, जो सिटीजनरी की तरफ से जो रिस्पॉन्स मिला है, दैट हैज़ बीन वेरी वेरी ओवरवेलमिंग। सो वी आर वेरी एक्चुअली प्राउड ऑल्सो एज ए नेशन कि मतलब एवरी सिटीजन एक्चुअली स्टूड अप टू दिस। जो हम तैयारी ये कर रहे हैं कि जैसा हमने कहा कि हमने अपना ये एनरोलमेंट को डबल करना है, तो एक तो ये तैयारी साथ में चल रही है। जो कम्युनिकेशन कहीं कहीं पे देखा गया कि जो सायरन नहीं काम कर रहा है ये, तो उसके लिए हम इमरजेंसी प्रोक्योरमेंट कर रहे हैं उसके लिए। आज मैं एक सभी डीजीज ऑफ सिविल डिफेंस का आज मैं आफ्टरनून में मीटिंग भी लेने वाला हूं, जिसमें कि मतलब कि क्या क्या कितनी तैयारी है और क्या तैयारी करनी है उसके लिए भी लिया जाएगा। इम्पॉर्टेंट टाउन्स हैं वहाँ पे, जैसे कि मेट्रोज़ हैं, ये जैसे मैंने कहा कि उसको एक शेल्टर की तरफ यूज़ किया जा सकता है, तो उसको भी हम आइडेंटिफाई कर रहे हैं कि उसकी कैपेसिटी क्या है, कि कहाँ पे अगर एक्शन हुआ तो उस शेल्टर का, अगर कोई थ्रेट आया तो हम उस शेल्टर का उपयोग कर सकते हैं। बॉर्डर्स में हमारे ट्रेंचेस शेल्टर्स ये हैं, तो उसको ऑलरेडी क्लियर हो गया है, उसमें रहने का थोड़ा सा प्रोविजनिंग का ये सब का इंतज़ाम हो रहा है। अगर वो काफ़ी थ्रेट में है तो वहाँ पे इवैक्यूएट करने के लिए भी तैयारी हो रही है, और काफ़ी जगह पे इवैक्यूएशन काफ़ी तीव्र गति से या तेज़ी से और विदाउट पैनिक किया भी जा गया है। देखिए, पैनिक से इट लीड्स टू बॉटलनेक्स एंड डजंट अचीव एनी ऑब्जेक्टिव, और अगर शांति से ये देख के किया जाए तो बहुत सुचारू रूप से सब चीज़ हो सकता है। इसी के लिए अगेन आई रिपीट, देयर इज़ नो नीड फॉर पैनिक, एंड वी डू नॉट एक्सपेक्ट कि सिविलियन पॉपुलेशन में बहुत ज़्यादा कुछ करने की आवश्यकता होगी।
I think that's the reassurance which is required from coming from somebody like you. But sir, in a manner that Pakistan has shown aggression, and in this age where drones and missiles have taken center stage, has it changed your risk management protocol, especially in the border cities which could be on the radar?
हाँ, देखिए, आफ्टर दिस यूक्रेन वॉर मतलब दिस ड्रोन्स हैव कम इनटू फोकस, and and they can be deployed very effectively against variety of targets, human targets, etc. So that is one area of threat, definitely, and depending upon the type of drone, they can actually travel long distances also. The smaller drones can come so this is outside the purview of my department, and I'm sure our Air Force, and you have witnessed it in the last 24 hours also, that they have been taking good care of all airborne threat, whether it be missile or be enemy aircraft or be enemy drones. They have really not been able to penetrate our air defense systems. So we stand by our armed forces, all of us together, including the auxiliary forces.
You know, since technology has changed the rules of warfare, are we also using technology to our benefit, and especially when it comes to our emergency response mechanisms? So for example, there's a lot of talk about artificial intelligence. Our Prime Minister keeps talking about how technology can be a great enabler in our development journey. So is there any way in which we can integrate these technologies in our emergency response mechanisms?
इसमें देखिए, we are in a position to inform our citizenry regarding the threat using current technology like SMS, which we do in disasters. But many times, our normal backbone, we try that it is siren, because you may not look at your mobile, so you may not be aware of that threat. Siren is ubiquitous, matlab it's public citizens should also understand which sound is for an incoming threat and which type of sound is for an all clear signal, so that they should know. Other things which we are doing is ki we have already started disseminating ki what action to be taken for different kind of things in small video clips which we are circulating. We are also currently in the process of making those videos, and we will be circulating them in the near future. So those will be very instructional ki matlab for a specific situation what you have to do. In a very small video we will be circulating those clips.
while we are upping our preparation in terms of the infrastructure, in terms of our response mechanisms, coordination is key in these volatile situations. So how is your department enhancing coordination with the forces that are on the front line and other agencies which are also deployed in the current scenario?
You very correctly stated, because unless there is a cohesive and a coordinated effort, and for which, as I said, there is a synergy between the armed forces, because they will be detecting the threat.
Absolutely.
They will also be detecting where this threat is headed if they are unable to neutralize it midway. So we have a backbone of dedicated hotlines for communicating that. So to the, as I said, to the civil defense control rooms. And then it is further disseminated to the tertiary centers in the cities from the civil defense centers. So this synergy is already existing. Even as I can tell you, on the 7th evening when we did this rehearsal, what inputs when we got in the evening, 24 lakh volunteers and forces had joined hands to conduct that exercise across the country, in which I am not counting the citizenry. So this is a very huge number of uniformed volunteers, uniformed forces and volunteers who had come together for this, and that too immediately without a preparation. So now as time is progressing, we are actually better and better prepared. So the citizenry must remain assured that the armed forces, the police, the paramilitary forces and the auxiliary forces like the civil defense and the home guards, and they are there. The auxiliary forces are in situ, they are with us, so they will respond the first, and of course the response will be buttressed further by the police, the paramilitary. Army will take care of the borders. Army.
Certainly, it's every stakeholder has to work together. The question now comes to the civilian part of it, and because not just to deal with the current situation, but largely since we are surrounded by hostile neighbors. So the question here is, do you have long-term plans to strengthen the civilian infrastructure to deal with unprecedented volatile situations like these, and which you never know, they are futuristic challenges that we must be prepared for?
Oh yes, because as I said again, I will reiterate it again, the Honorable Prime Minister had given very clear instructions that we have to ratchet up our civil defense preparedness, not only with respect to the current threat which we are facing, but any future threat, because this will also stand us in good threat, during natural disasters which the country actually keeps on facing. Because civil defense, the role is not only for hostile attack, but also during disasters. So it has a twin role to meet. Currently we are oriented towards hostile attack, but if required, they also work in disaster situations.
How do you expect the general public to contribute to or prepare for emergency situations like these and the futuristic challenges that India faces, given the volatile geopolitical scenario as well? So the role of the general public in dealing with situations, if there's a message that you want to send across.
One thing I can say through this platform, that general public should volunteer to become a part of this auxiliary force, because the larger this force and the better trained it is, the more people we can effectively mobilize during a time of crisis. However, those people who cannot find time to do this, what they can do is to cooperate with whatever instructions are being issued by the civil defense personnel and the police, etc., and not panic. That would actually suffice.
So one last question, and this is a little away from your current role. You're an officer of the Gujarat cadre. You've worked in various capacities under Prime Minister Narendra Modi. You've also been Director SPG. So it's little related to your personal experience of having worked with somebody whose persona and whose approach towards national security is of course is the talk of the town. Everyone is talking about where India will take this tension with Pakistan too, especially because you want to send across that message to everyone in the world, every adversary, that the value of every Indian, every Indian life has a value, and Indian government will do whatever it takes to avenge if you kill innocent people, and that we have seen in the kind of calibrated response India has shown following the Pahalgam attack. So if you could share your personal experience of the Prime Minister's approach in dealing with issues of national security.
My take would be that the Prime Minister, he is a very decisive personality. He listens to everybody, then he will formulate an opinion and take it to its logical conclusion. Whatever little experience I have had with him, I have never seen him wavering in that. Wavering in his commitment to the nation, not to any personality or person. So that his superordinate goal always have been nation first, maybe nation second and nation third. It really doesn't depend upon, and I have really not found that anybody or person can browbeat him into doing anything different if he has actually made up his mind to do something.
Absolutely.
And another thing is, even on the 7th, while we were doing this plan, even there were small children from a Rohini school. I would just like to narrate. Class 7, she had written a poem in which she also extolled Mr. Narendra Modi and how all of them are standing behind him. So he has achieved a leadership role where even children, youth, everybody is standing behind him, and we are sure, I am sure that he will take the correct decisions, which will be for the benefit of our nation.
And I think that's what sets him apart, and he enjoys the trust and confidence of every Indian, that he just doesn't say it, he means every word of it, and when he says nation first. So perhaps that's something that he reflects in action as well. So thank you so much, sir, for joining us for this engaging conversation, talking about India's preparedness as far as fire services and civil defense is concerned, also assuring our citizens that there is nothing to panic, sharing the plans how to strengthen civilian infrastructure for to deal with futuristic challenges, and also sharing your personal experience of having worked with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Wonderful to have you with us, engage in this conversation on Sansad TV. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
And viewers, thank you very much for your time as well. That's it from us on this edition of Samvaad.
To watch more programs of Sansad TV, subscribe to our YouTube channel and don't forget to like and share them.